To the top five report announcement. For those of you who have been here, you already know what the deal is about. For those of you who are new here, so primarily what we're going to be doing here today is we're going to be going through the month's challenge for Onyx data. And in this case, we had information or data regarding urbanization and demographics. And we're going to be going through the top five reports. And essentially, the main idea about it is we're going to be giving our personal feedback on it. So we're telling about certain things that we think are working very well, certain things that we think might be reconsidered or done a little bit differently. The main idea is to basically give you back from our experience what we think you should consider when building the next report, right? The main thing, as I've always said, is don't take anything too personally, right? This is our opinion. Nothing is very sort of set particularly in stone. These are just ideas and our opinion, right? You can take it into account and add it to your reports, or you can completely forget about it. It's completely up to you on what you do with it and how you deal with the information. But yeah, and of course, the most important part about going through the top five is at the end, we're also going to be announcing the winner for the challenge. That's the most important thing about it. But yeah, that's the main idea. Going through the reports, talking about them, seeing different opinions, see how these things could be visualized in different sort of scenarios. Because remember, at the end of the day, every single report that was built had the same starting data set. Those data sets, as we also always encourage you to do, is if you want to enhance them with additional dimensions or anything, you're more than welcome to do that. But every single one of you started at the same point. What you did with the data afterwards was completely up to you. So yeah, before we go into the actual reports, Armand, why don't you introduce yourself to the crowd?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm Arman van Amersfoort. I'm from the Netherlands, on the east side of the Netherlands. That's good to know, near the, how do you call it, German border. Yeah, so I'm a report creator. Yeah, I've been into the data viz scene for I think 4 years now. So that's a short time regarding the things I do and the things I learn. But still, yeah, before that, I was into web development, web design, app development for 21 years. So I've come from a different background, but still, yeah, more from the creative background. And so, yeah, that's what I do nowadays. A lot of consulting, but also training, and also bringing free passion to the community. That's
How
important.
How would you say was the first initial transition between web development and Power BI? Did you see a lot of similarities, or were you constantly facing a lot of challenges?
No, I think the difference between those two are sometimes really close to each other. There are a lot of techniques where you can driven your design. There are a lot of yeah, acknowledgement you have to know to, yeah, bring everything in a certain stage. And it's also with web development. I think web development needs to be in a high level every day, every time. With Power BI, there are some, yeah, reports that are okay if you make it a 7 or an 8 instead of a 10. So that's okay. But yeah, it's you have to yeah, challenge yourself every day, and that's with web and Power BI or data viz the same. So yeah, a lot of compared topics about performance, about design, about that's with both of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think at the end of the day, you can kind of always think about a Power BI report as a web app, right? Sure, certain
exactly,
reports are going to be just as a display report, certain going to be very statistically analytical ones, but most of them are you have to kind of consider it to basically be a web app because you're going to be
exactly.
distributing it through the services. People are going to be using it as a through the web browsers, and it's just an experience that you're building through the analytics.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I did in my first stage, my first approach. I was just creating simple reports with, hey, what is a table? What does a bar chart does? Do I grab a pie chart or not? It's always tricky. But in the end, when you work for customers, they always want more, and for sure, the American ones they need it on the screens on. So you have to, yeah, think about that technology. About, okay, how can I bring yeah, reporting to screens, to Apple watches at the end, and everything in between. So your technique and your it will grow in the journey. And so yeah, it feels sometimes like an app. Yeah. So yeah, there are a lot of differences, but also a lot of, yeah, the same things that are really important for Power BI or different toolings that yeah, within the data viz world.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I think one of
yeah,
the things is also very important to kind of not try to build everything straight away for all the platforms. Try to kind of focus on one and then enhance your capabilities and go step by step. But
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
enough chit chat, I guess, right? It's time to go through
yeah,
the top five. All right, so I'm gonna quickly share the screen as well. So let's go ahead and take, which one do I need? I need this one. So let's hide this one. So let's see. Perfect. It's live. So the first report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Misha Riaz. So congratulations, Misha, on getting into the top five. This is not the first time that Misha has been into the top five, so I'm always eager to see those reports where authors who are coming back and back. So things change, so that's always interesting to see. But yeah,
great.
congratulations getting into the top five, and let's take a closer look at the report. So,
Yeah. What I find
yeah,
my
go ahead.
first view, sorry, my first impression on this report was, oh wow, it was still even before I deep dived into the visual part and more the context part about. It's more about coloring, about the contrast between colors, about using black bar charts because it's coming. If you read the books, everybody knows, okay, I need to have gray or black bar charts, but
Yeah.
in the end, everybody uses color palettes. And so, yeah, that was my first impression um, when I saw this, and you don't even touch it because that impression is really the first one. Just like with web, it's with the report as well. We discussed about it as well, about aesthetic, about even if you don't filter or doing anything, what's your first impression? That's a real important one. Does it invite me to use it, to drill, to go to analytics? Because that's a real big audience nowadays, instead of the real diehard self-service people who are drag and drop and doing everything the same. Normally you create it for someone who's using it, maybe, I don't know, a couple of hours a week, and then yeah, so it's a new audience. So yeah, that was my first, yeah, impression on this one, on the not deep dive kind of situation, but more the first impression.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think for me, I like the overall sort of layout and position of things. I felt very good with it. The one thing that I think could be done a little bit less intense probably would be these switches between the different views, because I think the switches are important. It's important for the user to understand that there are going to be these buttons, but I think they take a lot of space away from, because if you, for example, compare the title should be the main thing about the chart, so I understand exactly what it is. But these are kind of overlapping, not overlapping, but taking away the attention, sort of. But
yeah,
again, a lot of these things that, for example, the size of the buttons, come on, you can fix it in like 5 seconds, so it's not a big deal. These things, that are always going to be things that you can adjust and quickly just make better. That's fine.
that's true.
uh,
Yeah,
so
what if, for example, if I can, yeah, sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, what is really important when you choose icons, for example, just a tip from my side, is what I see often when you have a lot of icons. In this situation, you have icons like, okay, you can navigate with icons, you can switch between bars and between. Just grab the icon as a family. So if you start with one icon that is just a line icon, just continue with line icons. If you have icons that are filled, in this case, then every icon needs to be filled. Otherwise, they will start to be messy when you have three, four of them. You have a lot of clutter. So I think that's an important one in this case. The icons are still just like sort of a family. There are no,
Mhm.
how do you call it, outliers kind of icons
Yeah.
saying, wow, this is a heavy one, or hey. So that's good. For sure, they can be smaller because even with web, that's also good to know with reporting, is you point the user to a certain area saying, okay, I want you to, for example, down drill here. I want you to know that, hey, we've got here our definitions, or so that point of action kind of things like you have in web is also important in reporting nowadays. And so if you have a lot of huge icons, and everything is too important, if you know what I mean.
No,
So
I fully get
yeah,
it.
yeah, that's also, yeah, with icons, it, it's good to know, I think. But
Absolutely. I
yeah,
also like the little touches with the informational buttons,
yeah,
right? Because not necessarily everything has to be a button. But the tricky part here is just from user experience, I can straight away tell you, and this is what I did as well. This is a button, this is a button, so this must be a button, right? So you're kind
Yeah,
of clicking on it, but it's not doing anything. So
exactly.
it's sort of like that fine line between figuring out, okay, I want to have it here, but how do I make it feel more intuitive? I don't think this is a bad approach. I think it's still a very good one with just a hover tooltip, but I would probably play around with the idea of having just a fallback that in case somebody clicks on it, I would also have a pop-up window just next to it, for example, just to kind
Yeah,
of play around with both of those scenarios because you'd never really know how people are going to react to things. So you kind of want to
exactly.
play around with these things.
Yeah,
Uh, but I do like the fact that, for example, these icons they allow you to switch between the different metrics. But the one thing that I would probably do as well here is since you essentially switch between the same thing across the charts, I would offer the possibility for the user to do it either on per visual basis, which you did right here, but also give them the opportunity to kind of have some sort of a master switch. If I want to quickly just switch to one or the other, just give me two buttons that allow me to do this. Otherwise, I have to go through, well, in this case, because the cards also showcase, so I have to do one, two, three, four, five. Thank God there's not a sixth one. So it's just
yeah,
one of those things. Don't make the user kind of do unnecessary actions. If you can do something to allow them to do this quicker, play around with the idea. If you fully kind of think, play around with it and be like, nah, I just don't like it. Okay, that's fine. Our job here is to kind of give you that information so you can think about it, right? So that was
yeah.
one thing that I would probably do, like, because when I first played around with the report, that was the first thing that if I want to quickly switch back to the initial view, I either have to have some sort of a reset button somewhere, or I have to click every single visual just to get back to that initial state. Other than that, I think it's good. For the timeline, I would probably use some sort of a threshold because otherwise I don't really understand why half of them is green, half is black. There has to
Yeah,
be some indication where's the drop off point.
exactly. Yeah, and what also is important nowadays is that you create a visual like this where the user can also, I don't know if it's possible within this report, choose his own time frame, saying, okay, based on an area, I just want to see a certain. This is everything.
Yeah. Hmm.
And nowadays, the more advanced kind of analytics, where users are really in control. Otherwise, they have to look for switches, or they just say, okay, I want just this period. Or
Hmm.
is that impossible right now?
It would be possible if it would be a timeline on the combo, since it considers every unit a category. You can't create that continuous selection. So
Okay.
if it would be a timeline, I would just be able to hover over x-axis and create a selection. But yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
in this
Okay.
case,
That's
what you could do probably with the chart is just one of the things that, yeah, we do with the charts is we allow you to kind of freely move them around. And this is primarily done so we can support different environments. And one of them is touch driven environment. So you can just take the chart and just physically position yourself where you want to. And once you let it
great.
go, that is the filter that goes outwards.
That's great. And do you also have a lasso kind of function saying, okay, I just want this time area, and then when you
For the combo, no. If it would be a
okay,
timeline, then yeah. Because for the timeline, the main idea there is that categories are never really connected, right? Those could be
yeah,
completely distinguished categories. Whereas a timeline, it tells that you have a continuous axis. So there is continuality between them. So different interaction options. If there's going to be a timeline, I'm going to show you how to use that as well.
great, great. That's great.
But yeah, I think that the idea of switching between different things is good. I like the approach. The card
Yeah,
visual kind
yeah.
of gives
Continue.
you the first focus, right? It kind of forces you
Yeah,
to
yeah.
look there first, which is something that I like. Uh, but one thing that I would probably recommend to think about as well is if you have everywhere else the same principle where you have the population and the urban growth, then have the same principle here. Because for me, it didn't initially click that it's exactly the same switch, but just suddenly these are arrows. Whereas here, these are two different icons. So I would probably keep the same thing consistent across the board.
Yeah, consistency is important, but also what I see often with all sort of users nowadays, when I create also icons like this, I get some feedback sometimes from customers saying after 1 month, I didn't know I can switch,
Yeah.
or and that's so I have to show them instead of instead of an eye saying, okay, here you can switch, or those childish kind of situations can be really handy because there is no manual. You aren't next to your end users. Sometimes they have to just yeah, grab the report like this. So if you don't know that the right one on the KPI card is is a kind of a switch or has an
Hmm.
action, you have to tell them.
Yeah, yeah.
You have just tell them, okay, and if they know, then that small things are really important regarding, yeah, usability, and some explanation can be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. This is one of the
Yeah,
reasons why, I mean, some other reports and other challenges you can guys look through the archive and see them. We have different experiences. We have people who have tried to kind of create a guided tour where basically you're taking through the steps to know how to use the report. In other cases, you can just create a simple information overlay to kind of quickly explain what to do,
yeah,
what's an action item, and so forth. It's not like we force you to do it. It's just that that's the reality. Think about the typical user. When you first came to Power BI, I can bet my money on that the first thing that you thought, no, this is definitely going to be a button, right? You think like, okay, that's an element. Cool. Looks
yeah.
interesting.
It is. Yeah, yeah. It's nowadays. Like I said, I see a lot of, and I create a lot of reports where I grab the feedback from the teams or the area where I've created for.
Hmm.
They also come with feedback that I just said, "Oh wow, I never thought about it." Or, "Hey, you all always go to a certain corner or a different." Yeah, sometimes the normal slicer they don't, or the horizontal slicer, in a way they say, "Okay, can I just touch February or March? Is that possible?" They don't. I have to point out saying, "Okay, this is a slicer. Here you can switch. Here you can
Yeah.
choose. Here you can drill through." Otherwise, yeah, if you're not that experienced, then sometimes people are really, how do you call it, passive, don't do anything,
Hmm.
and then, yeah,
I think it's that's one of the things that I usually recommend is whenever you build a report, try giving it to somebody who has really no knowledge about what's
yeah,
going on here, because they're going to be your first line of defense. If they don't
yeah,
know how to use this, they get very confused. It means that something is on a core level not done correctly, right? And the second thing that you can kind of understand from them is look at where they start to click or try to interact with things. It means that
yeah,
that item either looks too much of a button, and you have to think about these things. So this is what I do usually as well whenever I build, of course, non-confidential data. Of course, yeah, let's cut that off. When it's non-confidential, I can easily give it to, for example, my wife and just see, okay, what do you think
yeah,
about the report? What are the things that kind of grab your attention? What do you start to do to kind of just get into that mindset and see, okay, if
yeah.
I don't know what's in the report, what's the first thing I do?
Exactly. That's always what I tell people, saying instead of publish to web, or do I say, okay, what about publish to my mother first? And then she
Yeah.
will say, hey, what's this? And hey, oh, is this a? So that's important. It's you are the creator, so your mind is 12 hours a day into, okay, this is what I want. This is how I drill through. This is, and then you hand it over to people that, yeah, you're not sitting next to, so you don't have explanation or training sometimes, or so they need to deep dive. They need to know everything that's possible, and so yeah, that's important.
Absolutely.
Guide them.
Yeah, because the tricky thing is you have to remember that whenever you are building a report, you already know what's going to be the result when you do something. They have
Yeah,
no idea.
yeah,
So they're just experimenting with things.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Purely from a visual perspective, I like the idea here, but I would probably switch it to 100% stacked bar chart to kind of
Yeah,
showcase how the differentiation has been fluctuating. Because if you understand that this is going to be 100%, of course, one is going to go down, one's going to go up, right? So I much rather kind of showcase the composition there. Similar approach could be done also here. Same as on the first page. Give me a reference line so I know why this thing is getting cut off. Why is it in green or the black? Alternatively, in the information button, then if it's not visible here, tell me in the information button. What's
true.
it kind of gives you an insight here once you kind of understand what's happening, that it's basically based on this value, but at the same time it doesn't really click straight away, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah,
And
what I
yeah,
find
go
also
ahead.
good on this report is that the user or the creator uses the title and subtitle, for example. That can be
Hmm.
really, that annotation kind of thing is really important. Sometimes there's, okay, where do I look at the context about things? I ask some, yeah, persons about, okay, what is important on this report, and then the title and subtitles will show, yeah, mostly the context, or sometimes the conclusion or your summary.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, overall, I would say it's a great report. Congratulations in getting into the top five. Let's move on to the next one. Let's see what else we have here. So the next report that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Jason Carl Martin Tupas. Congratulations. Let's open it up and take a closer look at it. You can already see I started to play around with it, so let's quickly reset everything. So, the one thing that I kind of first thought about when I entered this, right? I do understand the monochromatic approach where everything is very similar in color. I would probably want a little bit of accent somewhere just to kind of highlight maybe some important parts, because that's also an important part of it. And the other thing, if we started to talk about the color, the one thing that kind of confused me a little bit is you had it gray, then you kind of go into the brown direction, then we're going into the black basically, and then suddenly this is completely off the palette. It seemed like so if it would be the same approach, I would kind of, I know, feel a little bit better about it, but that might be just personal preference. Other than that, I really like the fact that you created a massive card that kind of gives me the full overall picture of the current
Yeah.
situation, and then everything else is just based on different dimensions. So if I
Exactly.
want to select something here, for example, upper middle income classes based on the countries, and everything again gets cross filtered and I see the information, I can use the map to even further. So that allows me to kind of play around with what's visible here. The tricky part, though, is probably something that's unavoidable sometimes, unfortunately, but something you have to take into consideration is that, for example, if I do this right and go down to countries and then I have a map right next to it, selecting a country will result me in just one massive bar right next to it, which is understandable why it's happening. But from an end user perspective, I can guarantee that somebody's going to tell you what just happened here. Why do I
Yeah.
just have one massive bar here?
Yeah. So
So
is something like edit interaction something that's will
I
get
don't
used
think
to it? So
necessarily edit interactions. I would probably say just different dimensions. I do
okay.
understand the principle, but I would probably then go ahead and maybe if we had the middle income classes, there's probably some other parameter that I could put
Yeah.
underneath it.
Okay.
So that's one thing. The other thing that I noticed is I like this switch. I really like it because it allows you to switch from cumulative population to actual growth changes over time.
Yeah.
But the tricky part is that I just wanted to click back on it, but the active part is the side of it. So you have to remember to click on one or the other. Trust me, the users are just going to chaotically click on wherever they have the mouse. So I would probably just make it a button that allows you to click anywhere on it to kind of move between one or the other side.
Yeah. True. Yeah. That's a
And
good one.
yeah, and the other thing is give me a title. What am I doing here?
Yeah. You have to explain what do I do? Do I switch between what? Does the axis changes? Do I? Is it just a single value, or can I? What do I do over here? That's important. That's a really important part. But I like the how do you call it, the overall view in the first place. It's
Yeah.
really tough. I find it normally tough when you work with a sort of a gradient or a class morphism kind of, yeah, what you
Hmm.
see nowadays. Um, but still, when I, yeah, it's tough. So yeah, this is okay. I think you can
No,
show
no,
the
it's okay.
outliers. Well, like you said, you can show more outliers, saying, okay, here is Spain. Here is something that's above average. You need to look at this one or that one,
Hmm.
so you can point out more. Um, and still, I also find the country overview still with the country part and the globe and the, yeah, you see also what you see. Brazil, there were a lot of reports that, for example, when I click on Brazil, nothing tells me that it was Brazil. So I had to find out. I said, okay, is it Brazil? So here is constant. Yeah, that's important also. That it's how do you call it? I have to check what I have filtered, or instead of, okay, I just click on it and it maybe it is Brazil. So these
Yeah.
little things are important. Also the flag. So people are really visual minded. So they just click on, okay, this is the flag. This is country wise, or that's also good to do those both
I
kind of
think that the
things.
one nice nuance that they took the time to actually implement is that rather than just having a country flag, those are the actual shapes of the country. Sure, it might be kind of weird, for example, for Chile, right, where you just have a long line. But at the same time,
Yeah,
for other countries, it feels nice.
yeah, it
Sure, if
does.
your customer is going to say that, hey, We fully understand it, but we would just want to have a regular flag. Fine, you can quickly adjust it. But
Yeah.
this gives them sort of ideas on how things could be managed and handled. So I really like that approach as well.
Yeah.
And
Same.
throughout the pages, I think the main thing that I like about it is sort of consistency. There's always going to
Yeah.
be something very important, and you highlight it clearly. And then you showcase that everything else is basically something that allows me to drive what's here. This is not the driver, this is the result of the drivers, basically.
True. True.
You have the reset button, which allows me to always get back to initial state if I clear, or sorry, not clear, but apply different filters. Because trust me, people are gonna get lost. It's one of the things that Power BI and interactive reports in general are just infamous for.
They do. Yeah. They do.
So those things and the raw data, I think it was an interesting approach to kind of give them idea of how the raw data was looking like. Not necessarily probably gonna be interesting for everyone, but for those who are interested,
Sometimes. Yeah, it
yeah,
can be. Yeah. What I, for example, miss in this one
sure.
is I don't know if it's real Dutch or it's a home. Otherwise, you start on your total. Yeah, but still,
Mm,
my starting port is always home. Even I have a KPI overview or something. There is a home.
hmm
Just like web maybe, but yeah. So those small things, people say, okay, I've got 4 topics, but still, I start somewhere. So sometimes you can just say, okay, I start on a home page, a
Yeah,
home where you have your. It can be the same page like this, but still, yeah, just that sort of things. But yeah, I like it a lot.
yeah. I think the home pages are good, but there's just one rule that I always apply to it. Don't just make a home page just because. Make sure that it also adds some sort of a value, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, homepage is for communication. I said it's like, okay, when is my data refreshed? Sometimes it's also into marketing, saying, okay, I want something branded.
hmm
But still, it's also personal. What I also do is create a homepage telling me, okay, hi, Armel van Amersfoort, that's my name. This
Yeah,
is your environment. So when I'm looking at this one, it is still not from me because my name is not there. And I know I have a user principal name, for example, in Power BI. They just say hi to me. Welcome back to you. Welcome back, Armand. That's what you need. It's normal
yeah,
within applications like Google Analytics or other things. You have to know, okay, I'm in it. I'm part of it. So that's what I always do. Yeah,
hmm
great.
But yeah, overall, I would say it's a very nice and clean report. There's not a lot of clutter. The only thing that I would probably reconsider is this map right here. I like it visually. The only thing that I was constantly thinking about or trying to do is clicking on the countries. I know I have it here, but because it's also here, I thought like, oh, maybe this is just for convenience reasons. It's a little bit closer. But
Yeah.
yeah, since it doesn't do anything, I would maybe make it a little bit smaller and kind of have it fit nicely within that segment of navigation panel to kind of leave it outside of the report. Now, when it's crossing over, it kind of make me feel like it's part of the report, right? So
Yeah.
it might be just me.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe because my first impression was, okay, great. There is somebody who can really think a little bit out of the box because it has a
Mhm.
depth right now. It's over the border. So it's not everything in boxes. And so for me, it was a little bit, yeah, what do you call it? It was okay.
Okay.
But as you can see, we've both different, yeah, left and
That's the
right
thing.
brains.
Yeah. There's always going to be different opinions, and that's fine,
Yeah.
guys, and that's something you have to get used to as well. There's not going to be a situation where everything you do is going to be just perceived in one way. No,
Nah.
everybody looks at things differently.
Yeah.
Because trust me, people with different backgrounds, they're even going to notice different things. They're going to be looking at exactly the same page. Somebody's going to be like, oh, you know what? After this coma, I actually want to see a space. And then somebody's going to be like,
Yeah.
what do you mean a space? It's just confusing. There's no space
Yeah.
needed.
Yeah.
It's different comments, and you just have to kind of figure out, okay, how do I
Exactly.
juggle all of this information and make a good report?
Yeah.
It's part of the challenge.
Yeah. Know your audience. That's important.
Yes. But
That.
yeah, congratulations in getting into the top five. It's a very good report. So let's go to the next one and see what else we have here. So the next submission that has gotten itself into the top five comes from Akhilesh Raud. So congratulations, Akhilesh. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. So yeah, Armin, first impressions.
My first impression was on two ways. First, I said, okay, it was really clean.
hmm
Saying, okay, we got white, we got gray, we got light blue, more pastel kind of colors. How do you call it? Pastel?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
not the hard ones. My second one was based on, okay, what can be a tip or a trick, and I think consistency about how do you call it, alignment, font types with different sizes. Also, the color palette. I see a lot of different styles and color palettes inside of this one.
Mhm.
Also, the icon, like I said, the second one is aligned.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
one, so that is more in my brain saying, okay, if you change that sort of things, then it can be a real clean one. Saying, okay, I've got my KPI cards on the top, and then this is how do you call it, a box plot?
Yep.
No, not yeah, okay, but yeah.
It's a
So
slightly different version of a box plot.
yeah, I know. Yeah, but yeah, but also the combination between the filter on the left side with a different color in the back. Normally, people put them also on the white on the canvas, but people like
Mhm.
boxed things. On the left side, we got our filters. It's light gray. On the right side, I've got my information. But still, yeah. It also the icons. What do you think about that? The KPI icons.
I think they kind of fit okay within it. I would probably make them based on how this whole report has been built. I would probably make them a little bit closer to this style, right? That are not
Yeah,
fully filled, but they have the outlines of the icons, because that kind of feels more into the whole. I don't know. Design, let's call it design, right? So
yeah,
into the whole design, that's the one thing, because you have the information icons that are also outlines. This one is filled again, so it's kind of a mix and match. And then you have this icon, which just feels completely off of everything. Consistency, guys, is very important, because remember, the first impression that you get is before anybody even touches anything. That's the first visual point of view. That's the first impression they get for the report. And trust me, I've had reports also in my career where, for example, for I've done everything that the customer wanted, but it just wasn't what they were expecting. So even though I did everything, they look at it and be like, it's okay. And you're just thinking, I just spent like 40 hours building this, and you're telling me this is just okay?
yeah.
Just
I
with
know.
few little brush touches, right? Suddenly they're just like, no, this is amazing. You're like, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, those little visual touches, they do really make an impact. So having it consistent across the board is very important. Uh, Purely from a data perspective, the one thing that I would probably try to do, or this is one thing where I got kind of hung up, the donut chart.
yeah.
I don't understand the sorting for it, because it's high income, then it's lower middle income, and then it's upper middle. It's not based on class. Okay, so it may be based on value, but it's really not, because this is 5, this is 2, this is 80%. So I don't really know is based on what the chart is driven.
True.
That's
Yeah,
and the main reason why I noticed this, guys, is because, believe it or not, probably most of you already know this, but the donut chart is one of the most controversial visuals there is. There's 101 opinion about why not to use it. This would be another example of why not to use it.
yeah.
People are
True.
gonna just go to ends of world to say why it's a bad visual as soon as you do something wrong with it. So it's very important, whenever you do use a donut chart, use it on, let's say, proper rules. You have a defined sorting, you have an understandable way of reading the chart. It's not like it's a bad visual. No, it's just in this case it didn't quite work,
True.
because you still
Yes.
have the drill down, you can see everything. Because here suddenly you can see, okay, kind of seems like it is, but again, this seems like randomly put in somewhere. So from an end user perspective, I would probably say something just feels off. I like what it's doing, but the visual itself feels off. I like what you're doing with the accent colors, just to kind of highlight again the max, for example, which is the highest country with the highest urbanization level. For this one, I would probably get rid of the line, unless I play around with different variables, and that line actually changes a lot over time. I don't think there's an added benefit to it. Just having the labels would be enough. Because
True.
one of the things
Yeah.
you have to be careful about is overcrowding the visuals.
Yeah. Exactly. And also, when you use that more advanced kind of analytics, where you say, okay, this is above average, of this is my highest value, you have to tell me,
Hmm.
because everybody have a different approach about, okay, it is dark. Why is it dark? Or why is it? So you have to tell me in a visual matter. Okay, the dark blue is the highest value. Or hey, this is no explanation with everything, but you have to explain it within the chart, saying, okay, that's important for me to
Yeah.
know about. Okay, what where do I look at? What is And still, when I look at the KPIs, for example, what I don't often see is more of a, okay, you've got some targets, maybe you got some budgets or forecast kind of situations like this, and then make it conditional. Make it, for example, make the icons conditional based on, okay, it's better than, or it's worse than yesterday, or
Hmm.
we're on track or we don't on track, based on different techniques, instead of just static ones.
Yeah.
That's
I do think that the box plot visual itself is done very nicely.
Yeah,
It's not like jumping in your face, but it's very informative and it does provide you with a lot of information. Um, One thing though that I just noticed as well is these buttons, I would 100% switch them around. The
yeah.
reason for that is quite simple. You have a timeline, so you have continuality going from left to right. Suddenly, you're forcing me to go left to right the other way. So it goes from highest to lowest. Whereas here you go from 2014 to 23. Here it's the other way around, basically. So have the same principle of flow in all of your timelines. If we go
Yeah.
to growth trends, yep, this one feels nice as well. You have the country shapes, which allow me to cross filter the information, so that's all good. The tricky part here again is that as soon as I select a country, and this is like I said, it's sometimes unavoidable, but you have to figure out how to kind of handle these situations. Is whenever I select a country in any of the visuals, there's always just a single representation left at the end.
Yeah, what you can do, and what I see often with geo maps or sort of things, is make them, for example, bigger, and maybe you can tell the information or your second layer of analytics within a tooltip, for example, so you don't need that single bar anymore,
Hmm.
if that's possible. So you're really focused into that geo part, and then based on that, you can, instead of, yeah, just clicked on that single bars with, it's sometimes it's, you cannot avoid it every time, but yeah,
Yeah,
a card needs a bigger approach, I think.
I think what I would have probably done is like you said, I would make the map bigger because it is about a
Yeah,
country, right? So that's the main thing you're focusing on. I would add this. I could even add this whole chart in the tooltip page, but it wouldn't be necessary because you would just have one column. So I would
yeah,
probably make just regular cards. And here I would switch so that the splitter is in the country, but for example, the income category we had,
yeah,
because then you're
true.
giving three different views on what's already in the data set. But other than that, I would say it's still a very, like, this is one of the things I was talking about, right? You
Yeah.
don't have to always create guided tours and everything. Even something like this, it at least you tell to the user that this is something you can click, this is something you can activate, this is somewhere you read the map, for example. Just quick insights on what they can do about it. Trust me, it's better than just giving them a blank report and be like, well, you'll figure it out.
Yeah, yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good approach. I see it often nowadays. It's good. Just a sort of a layer, overlayer with, that's good. You can click it anywhere, then the usability should be spot on then,
Hmm.
instead of searching for. But yeah, that's great. Just
Absolutely.
yeah,
But yeah, overall, very good report.
yeah,
Congratulations on getting
for
into the
sure.
top five. Let's go to the next one. So, the next author that has gotten himself into the top five is from 𝐭𝐚𝐤𝐬𝐬. Congratulations. Let's open it up and take a closer look at it. So, Armin, your first feelings?
Well, it's nice to see that the last three of them and this one as well, people are using a lot of icons nowadays, isn't it? It also is as a clear navigation, saying, okay, this is my page navigation. Like I said, the explanation is very important. I know a lot of users who need to know, okay, this is my filter area. I like this one. That's okay.
Hmm.
There's a lot of, yeah, and still the color itself is, it's not hard for the eyes, saying, okay, you do, what you often see is hard blue with soft and hard. And so if you start with pastel or a kind of certain color type, then just continue with that, like this one. And also it matches the theme. It's not, the theme is not the default one, or hard blue, etc. So that is that's good. um yeah, so from that approach. But for example, what I often say, I never touch shadows. For example, I never created a report in my life where I use shadows around certain things, because when you use shadow, it has a focus. It says to me, okay, this one is very important, Arman. And what I see here, and I see a lot of reports, there are a lot of shadows around every box. So,
Hmm.
for in my opinion, everything is important. That's not true. So, if you need that shadow, that big shadow like this one, uh, just don't do it and make it really or small or maybe dividers, just to split up things into more boxes instead of shadow. Just use it. It will be more, yeah, professional in a certain way, more business wise,
Hmm.
cleaner, instead of the hard black shadow on everything. That's just, yeah, maybe a tip from my side, but try it. You will see things will be easier for the eyes.
Because
Yeah,
one thing you also have to consider, guys, and remember that even though shadows seem like a very basic thing to add, right? In order to draw a shadow, there's actually a lot of computation power taken into account.
yeah,
They have to figure out how far it goes, what's the opacity, how far it goes, how big is the offset, and everything. So, and like Armand said, if everything is important, the best quote I usually have is, "If everything is important, then nothing is important."
true.
There's
Yeah,
no such thing as everything's very important. No, there's usually one thing that you need to pay attention to. Everything else is there to basically enhance the information, but that's a different view for it. The one detail that I can tell you I love about this report, right? It's something that we just haven't implemented yet, but the author took its time to actually create a legend for the
ah,
conditional formatting.
great.
It's such a small little thing, but I think adds a lot of value to the visual. It's something that we're definitely going to be adding over time, but since we don't have it, I like to say kudos for taking the extra time to making one, right?
Yeah, that's great.
So that's very neatly done as well. Um, so if we play around with other visuals as well, so if we go to trend analysis, for example, insights, and yeah, this is something that I can actually say, congratulations, guys, you're starting to do this properly. You're highlighting the correct page that I'm currently on.
Yeah,
This is something that from time to time we have issues with, guys. Remember, you have to highlight somehow to the user which page I am currently on. Otherwise, it's very easy to get lost.
yeah. Your active states are important, and what I should do here is also create the active one on the icon part, not only the text part, but
Mhm.
that's it's more I'm a visual man, so I don't like to read, so I know, okay, the second one is the active one, so now only the text is active, and in my opinion the icon should also be active, but that's more, yeah, a small thing, but yeah.
Yeah, but still, once you give this information to them, it's something to take into consideration.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Make a note, guys. But yeah, also, for example, a guideline like this is what you said, for example, right? Just make a page where you explain, okay, you can click on the chart, there's going to be a drill down, there's a timeline, and so forth. There's no one way on how to do these things. It's really depending on the audience where you're delivering the message to. And since this is a timeline, this is how you would do it, Armand, in our timeline. So if I want to select a particular time unit, for example, a time period, I can just hover over the x-axis and create a selection.
Ah,
And
great.
the cool thing
Yeah,
about this is that if you imagine again using this, for example, on for example, a touchpad, it's the same motion. Those are
yeah,
gestures that
exactly.
you're used to every single day. So this is one of the things that we kind of try to implement in our charts as well, is that the things that you do is something that you're comfortable with doing.
That's
We do
cool.
understand
Yeah,
lasso tools and everything, but at the same time, sometimes less is more.
yeah, I know. Yeah, 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 sure. Sometimes the basics are too tough.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I
we're
know,
just
but
taking a different approach here. But
yeah,
yeah,
that's a great
so
approach. That's great. Yeah, that's really user friendly. And what you said, when it uses different devices as well, or
mhm.
yeah, that's it's also easy for a real beginner or someone who, yeah, like my mother. She can just say, okay, I just want to, yeah, highlight certain. Great.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
This page, you know my opinion about these sort of pages, guys, right? I fully get where you need to explain things, but a report shouldn't have this much text unless it's a specific sort of page where you dedicate sort of like you did right here, right? If you call it insights, I'm okay with this page because you're explicitly telling me that there's going to be a little bit of details and statistical data there, so I'm fine with it. If there would be this much text in other pages, not it's a no go. The one thing, though, to kind of quickly highlight here, guys, you can see already happening here. Our urban population has its formatting. Regular population doesn't have number formatting. Consistency.
true. Yeah,
Otherwise, I can ask you straight away, but I guess most of you are going to fail the same as me. I don't know if it's 43 mil, 432 mil. I need time to kind of read it. I would probably go like, okay, so that's 432 million.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah,
And of course, the animated chart. I mean, it's kind of hard to argue about animated charts because it's just something that people are gonna play around with. You cannot do anything against it. It's
it
something
is.
that they can watch. It's something that happens in the background.
Yeah,
So it's a good thing to kind of play around with as well.
yeah,
And I like that you didn't put it as part of a page that has everything static. You actually
true.
separated it into a
Yeah,
different page.
exactly. I've saw it as well, and I know a lot of data viz tools have sort of an animation kind of thing, and but
Yeah,
for some reasons, like a presentation or a different way, you can see an evolvement or a sort of a it's okay, but
yeah,
yeah,
because that's the thing, right? For example, at the same time, if I would wanted to look at this same chart, unless I have it in another page, if I just wanted to see this view
yeah,
when I start, I really can't do it because once I go here, I choose okay, total population. I now have to wait for it to end unless I stop it. Then I go to the end. No, no, it doesn't really go to the end yet. It goes year by year. So I have to wait for it to go through all the years just to see the final result. So
yeah,
animated charts are cool. That's for sure. Because everybody loves things that are just moving around, right? But at the same time, think about how you use it. And I think
yeah,
this use case was done properly. You created a separate page where you even specifically say that there's just going to be an animated chart.
yeah, exactly.
So that's all good.
Yeah, I do
Other
it
than
quite a
that,
lot.
yeah.
Not animated, but still, when I want to show my audience not only the things they ask to me, say okay, I want a bar chart, I'm always into a different approach with
Hmm.
like this one, just a new tab or a new page saying okay, you haven't asked me, but hey, this is okay, or hey, I've used the dacom tree, or hey, I use
Hmm.
different approach with. And then even if you say oh, it's not now, it's not okay for now, at the end he's coming back saying okay, now I've got a business case or a thing, I need that one. So yeah, I like the approach.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Because one thing that I do as well when I, for example, build my reports is I'm very indecisive in a sense. I like to try out different approaches on the same thing because at the end of the day, like you also mentioned this, and I usually say this as well, the end customer or the end user is the one who's going to be using it every single day. For me, every single thing seems like, pros and cons, but I don't know which one you want to use. So I
Yeah,
usually just create like two, three variations of the chart and just tell them, just tell me which one you want to use. For some ideas or inspirations, we can also do it like this, and
yeah,
the reason why I do those extra steps is because once you kind of showcase them different variations, it kind of lights a like a bulb in their head as well, like thinking about, okay, we could actually use this for a different thing
yeah.
because most of the times the actual requester doesn't really know what's possible. So it's kind of
That's it.
your job to also showcase different things that it could do. Of course, don't
Yeah,
add just random stuff. No, make it still be usable with the data you have. But showcasing different variations allows them to think like, okay, maybe not in this report, but you know what? We're gonna actually have a presentational report that we're gonna be doing 2 weeks later. This would be a perfect chart for it. Cool,
exactly. Yeah,
job done. So yeah, different variations is also very cool to kind of play around and showcase to the end users.
yeah. Like you
Yeah,
said, is
yeah,
important.
go
The end user or the audience doesn't know most of the time anything about the tool, the way you should present their data.
ahead.
They
Hmm.
always ask me, "You're the expert, Alman. Create a sales report." I said, "Wow, okay, but hey, what do you want to see, or what do you?" No,
Yeah.
no, no. You're the expert. I said, "Okay," and for sure, together with them. But I surprise them every time. Even if it's a negative one, I still say, "Okay, this is one of the cases you can use," or "Hey, you never seen a bubble chart because you don't ask for it," or what. I show them different kind of, and in their mind they just keep playing, and then bam, there will be a day they say, okay, now we need them,
Hmm.
and that's important. I think
Yeah. And
challenge them.
as soon as you mention sales report, this is it's usually the funniest thing that I usually have. When we were building also our sample gallery, I had a request to build a sales report. I'm like, cool, what do you want to see in it? Well, just make a good sales report. You do
Yeah,
realize that there's like 100 different KPIs that I could
yeah,
showcase there. What do you want? Just a very good sales report. Cool.
yeah, yeah,
And then you
yeah.
bring one and they're like, no, I wanted to see different
Nah.
things. Joe, so you couldn't tell me this in the beginning?
Yeah,
So
true.
one thing that I can definitely tell you guys, if you have a possibility to talk with the customer or the requester, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. because they're going to give you the bare minimum most of the time. So you have to kind of drag everything, basically extract with pliers out of them. What do you want to see? How do you want to see it? Why do you want to see it? Why
Yeah.
is this more important than this thing? And that gives you an overall understanding. Okay, I need to focus on these things because primarily they're going to be using it, for example, as a dashboard, just sitting on a TV in the sales room. So I need to be less interactive, but for example, more informative. Whereas this page is going to be used by the managers for daily activities. So it's going to be a little bit more different. So all those things taken into account create the overall experience for the reports.
Yeah, that's important. And what I sometimes do, and that's just, I don't know if it's my way of working, but still, I for some reason, for example, for the navigation, for now it's on the left side. Sometimes I create a one on the right side, and the audience can choose. Why? Because they're part of that project, saying, "Hey,
Yeah,
it was my choice," or "Hey, it is."
exactly.
That's important also for stakeholder management, but also instead of, "Okay, this is it. Okay, publish it, and good luck." No, no, no. I've just, their involvement is important. What sort of icons? Okay, we need line icons. Okay, do you have them? Can you create them? Or hey, is that just that? Yeah, you have to involve them into that project instead of, hey, this is it. It's published and now it's yours.
Yeah,
That's, yeah,
trust me.
that's
The
important.
more you kind of give them also the feeling that they're choosing and making a difference, trust me,
Yeah.
the satisfaction rating is also going to go up.
Oh yeah.
Because
Yeah.
otherwise, like Armin said, right? It's basically a project. Here you go. See you later.
Yeah.
Well,
That's,
good transaction.
yeah, it is. So they're also part of the adoption. So that's important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But
Great.
yeah, overall, great report.
Yeah.
Congratulations in getting into the top five. Let's go to the final report that has gotten itself into the top five. So that report comes from Akbar Dixon Okoloyo. Congratulations to you. Let's open up the report and take a closer look at it. So, for me, the one thing that I like, first of all, is I've talked about this hundreds of times. Armin, you weren't here, but this little thing right here, right? I always remind them that you do not showcase any comparison unless you have selected something. Because you can't really tell which year over year growth you're showcasing if you're doing it for everything. So, unless I have selected something, there's nothing to showcase,
Yeah.
which is a small detail but very important detail. So that's one thing. The other thing, when I play around with different pages and everything, there's one thing that I noticed that I would have probably done slightly differently. And Armand, actually, you could definitely comment on this one. So from my point of view, right, you have the female rate and male rate. Cool. It's basically the same number, but in reverse for both sides. What would have probably done is keep the original color either for male or female, so that it's basically a reverse donut. So here I would have this part highlighted, whereas here it would be the other part, to kind of emphasize on the same segment. That
True.
would be my idea. But
Yeah, that's a good idea. Or you have to combine them into one.
or combine them into one, because essentially it's already showing the same thing.
Yeah, it
Because
does.
you do guys know, right, that our donut chart supports images on slices, right? So you could easily do that.
Yeah, true. And
So
for me, this is a real important one because it is it. So for me, when I look at this report in the first area, the important part is the female split up because it's real big.
mhm.
And I don't know if that was the purpose from the report creator, but yeah, this kind of, yeah, that's great.
So just having an icon, male, female, split, understandable, all good. Because
Yeah,
the one thing, guys, don't forget about it. The most precious resource you have in a report is real estate. You then don't have unlimited amount of it. You have to figure out how to kind of showcase everything and highlight things. So that's one thing.
yeah,
What else? Cross filtering works, which is fine. I'm okay with that as well. But there's one thing that kind of threw me off a little bit. The total population is 19 billion.
yeah,
I'm quite sure we're not there yet. And if we would be, that would be probably a bit of an issue, knowing the density of people. But again, numbers and these things, we all make mistakes. That's fine. You can easily fix it in the data. So that's not an issue whatsoever. But yeah, the different comparisons. I like the approaches. I like the use of different charts. I like the fact that you're also, for example, this one, this
yeah.
is
The
kind of
tooltip.
a tricky chart because at the same time, I understand what you're kind of doing it. You're showing the split between each country. But if you're going sort of as a comparison, I would probably create a clustered chart rather than a stacked one, to
Yeah.
kind of have them side by side.
True.
But on the other hand, since you have this one stacked, this one kind of feels more intuitive. See, this is our thought process as well, right? It's not like we see a chart and straight away like, no, do this instead. Once you start to play around, you're like, nah, okay, you know what, this one kind of makes more sense in this specific scenario. So that's all good as well. The same, and this is what Armin mentioned as well. If you have these highlight points, tell me what they are. So that's the min, max, and the actual metric itself. You allow me to change between the metrics. The overall kind of thing that I have for this report, right, is it's very simple, which I like, and it's not very complex for the end user itself.
True. Yeah. That's what it is. Okay. Okay.
So yeah, one quick thing that I wanted to quickly find, I wanted to give a quick shout out for it. If I can quickly find it, I definitely remember that I saw it, but I don't remember which report it was. No, maybe it was the same one. Hey, oh no, I froze the report. Come back. That's this one. It's a very small little detail, right? But I didn't even notice at first that this is actually a chart itself. It's not just a background of an image. That's an actual chart. And I think this was actually a missed opportunity since it is a data driven chart. Because if I hover over, you can see I have nodes on certain locations. I would have probably just put on those total population numbers on top of here,
Yeah.
just to kind of give an intro on what's about to happen, for example. But I love the idea. I mean, at first, I didn't even realize that this is a chart. It kind of
Yeah.
felt
Me
like
too.
it's a.
I thought it was an image.
Exactly, right? That's my first impression
Yeah.
as well. But then I
Yeah.
started to hover over. I was like, wait a second.
Yeah. I tried a lot, but I thought it was an image. So I thought, okay, cool. It was more of a. But still, if you use it as a chart, it will also grab some performance, I think, at the end. So you have to think about, okay, if people don't use it and it will be just a visual part, then I think it should be an image or SVG or base 64 kind of style.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
if it has no function or too simple, then maybe you can just plot on the KPIs or yeah, that's also an approach because design can be okay, but if your performance is not okay, then design is yeah.
absolutely.
So
It's
yeah,
it's one of the challenges that we guys struggle with every single day as well, right? But I like the fact that you know what this reminded me. Whenever when I started with Power BI, the whole thing was basically figuring out how to work around the limitation with different workarounds, and this is what you did.
yeah,
So
true,
kudos for that approach. I like it.
definitely,
Personal shout
definitely,
out.
yeah, yeah,
All right. So what I'm gonna do now is quickly stop sharing the screen. I'm gonna find the winning report. Just also double checking against my materials. You know, don't want to showcase the wrong one and look like a fool. All right. I think this is gonna be the right one. Let's share it. So the winner for this month's challenge is once it goes live. There we go. Jason
yeah,
Davis. Woo!
great,
Congratulations. So yeah, overall, I think it was a great report. Sure, there are some bits and pieces that can always be tweaked, but don't be too kind of I don't know, offended by it or worried about it. Every single report that is developed has things that can be improved upon. It doesn't matter if it's my report. I think Armin's probably going to have the same feeling. There's always things that you can kind of make look better, make feel more intuitive. It's
yeah,
a never-ending battle. The
true,
more the technology advances itself, the more things come into hand because trust me, before, for example, 3 years and now, the capabilities you have within Power BI, they're just
yeah,
drastically changed.
it is. Yeah, congrats from my side as well for all of them. I see a lot of crazy things in a positive way. And still, if you create reports to current year and you look back, and when I look back at my reports, I said, "Oh my lord!" It because of the technique, the changes, your own passion, your own knowledge, it will grow. It will just learn from each other, and then yeah, it's just
No, no, I've said this the same thing before. The first reports that I created, they're locked in a vault, and a key has been thrown out. I don't want to see them again, and nobody's gonna see them again.
I always said they're retro. It's more like the
Oh
'60s
yeah,
and the
yeah,
'70s.
sure, yeah. It's like going back to the 80 websites, right, where we
Yeah,
had all the pop-ups and
yeah,
everything. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, we're just advancing with times, and the more you
yeah.
know, the better. There's
I've,
always going to
I've
be interesting techniques, and
exactly. Yeah. It's sometimes it's just hard. People ask me, "Oh, can you make cool tables, cool matrices?" I said,
yeah,
I cannot create them." So sometimes it just has to be simple, plain, and it do its thing. But yeah, well, congrats, Jason, from my
absolutely.
side as well. Yeah, great.
All right. Congratulations to Jason as well. Congratulations to every single one of you who participated. Don't forget that the next month's challenge is also going to be launching, I think, tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken. So there's again a new data set, new opportunity to showcase your capabilities and your skills. So thank you so much for your time, guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Bye bye.